The ballroom of the Grand Regent Hotel shimmered beneath crystal chandeliers, where the city's wealthiest investors, politicians, and entrepreneurs gathered for the annual Lawson Real Estate Gala. Waiters in crisp white uniforms moved gracefully through the crowd carrying silver trays of champagne, while a string quartet played softly in the background. Expensive suits, glittering jewelry, and confident laughter filled the room. It was the kind of event where success was measured by appearances, and every guest competed to impress. At the center of the attention stood Victoria Lawson. Elegant in a designer black evening gown, she greeted influential guests with polished smiles and confident handshakes. Her company had just completed its biggest commercial development, and tonight was meant to celebrate her growing reputation as one of the city's most successful businesswomen. As reporters snapped photos, one of her colleagues leaned closer and asked with a grin, "Victoria, where's your husband? We were all looking forward to meeting him." Victoria's smile stiffened for just a fraction of a second. "Oh," she replied with a dismissive laugh, "Daniel is busy at work." The group chuckled politely, assuming he must be an executive tied up in an important meeting. Victoria didn't bother correcting them. She preferred it that way. She hated explaining that her husband owned nothing more than a tiny bicycle repair shop tucked away on a quiet side street. In her eyes, his honest profession had become an embarrassment. While she attended glamorous events and negotiated million-dollar contracts, Daniel spent his days repairing flat tires, replacing rusty chains, and helping neighborhood children fix their old bicycles. To Victoria, he represented everything she wanted to leave behind. Across town, Daniel wiped the grease from his hands and looked at the old wall clock inside his modest repair shop. His eyes widened. "Our anniversary," he whispered. He had been so busy helping an elderly customer repair a bicycle that he had almost forgotten the date. With genuine excitement, he closed the shop early, carefully washed his hands, and changed into the cleanest shirt he had. Though the sleeves were slightly worn, he ironed them neatly. On his way to the hotel, he stopped at a small flower stand and spent nearly the last of his week's earnings on a bouquet of white lilies, Victoria's favorite flowers from the day they first met. Unable to afford a taxi in the busy evening traffic, Daniel climbed onto his well-maintained bicycle and pedaled toward the brightly lit hotel, smiling as he imagined surprising his wife. When he arrived, the hotel staff looked uncertain as they noticed his simple clothes and bicycle. Still, Daniel politely explained that he was Victoria Lawson's husband. After a brief hesitation, they allowed him inside. The lively conversations faded as Daniel entered the ballroom carrying the bouquet. Many guests turned to look. Some whispered. Others exchanged amused smiles after noticing the grease stains that still lingered beneath his fingernails despite his careful washing. Victoria looked toward the entrance. The moment she saw Daniel standing there with the flowers, her face drained of color, not with happiness, but with embarrassment. Daniel smiled warmly. "Happy anniversary, Victoria," he said gently, holding out the bouquet. "I wanted to surprise you." Instead of accepting the flowers, Victoria stared at him in disbelief. Her voice rose loud enough for the entire ballroom to hear. "You actually came here looking like that?" The room fell silent. She laughed bitterly before adding, "Look at you. You're still fixing bicycles while everyone here builds companies and fortunes." A ripple of uncomfortable laughter spread through the crowd. Victoria snatched the bouquet from his hands and carelessly tossed it onto a nearby table. "You're nothing but a poor bicycle mechanic," she declared coldly. "You're the biggest mistake I ever made." Daniel stood motionless, his smile fading into quiet heartbreak. Without arguing or raising his voice, he lowered his head. "I'm sorry for embarrassing you," he said softly. Turning toward the exit, he walked away with quiet dignity, leaving the ballroom in stunned silence. As Daniel reached his bicycle outside, an elderly billionaire watching from an upper balcony suddenly froze. His eyes widened with disbelief as he stared at the humble mechanic disappearing into the night. He whispered only 4 words. "It can't possibly be him." The morning after the gala, the city buzzed with conversations about Victoria Lawson's lavish celebration. Business blogs praised the event, newspapers highlighted the successful real estate launch, and social media overflowed with glamorous photos from the evening. Yet among the polished images, one short video had quietly begun circulating. It showed a man in simple clothes holding a bouquet of white lilies while a beautifully dressed woman publicly humiliated him before hundreds of guests. Most viewers didn't know his name. But many couldn't forget the sadness in his eyes. Daniel, however, never watched the video. He unlocked the door to his small bicycle repair shop just after sunrise, exactly as he had done every morning for the past 8 years. The little shop sat on a peaceful neighborhood corner between a bakery and an old bookstore. Its faded wooden sign simply read, "Daniel's Bicycle Repair." Inside, the familiar scent of rubber tires, machine oil, and polished steel greeted him. He switched on the lights, hung his apron on the wall, and quietly began arranging tools on his workbench. Not once did he complain about what had happened the night before. His first customer was 10-year-old Tommy, who nervously pushed in an old mountain bike with a broken chain. "Mr. Daniel," the boy said shyly, I don't have enough money today. Can you fix it? I promise I'll pay next week." Daniel smiled warmly. "Let's worry about getting you back on your bike first." Within 15 minutes, the bicycle was repaired. When Tommy reached into his pocket to hand over a few coins, Daniel gently closed the boy's hand. "Keep it," he said. "Maybe buy yourself an ice cream after school." The child's face lit up with excitement. "Thank you, Mr. Daniel." As Tommy rode away, an elderly woman entered carrying a rusty bicycle that had clearly seen better days. "My grandson uses this to get to school," she explained apologetically. "I can only afford the cheapest repair." Daniel carefully examined the bicycle before shaking his head with a gentle smile. "No charge today." The woman looked confused. "But I insist." "You've already paid." "When?" "With that smile your grandson will have when he rides it tomorrow." Tears filled the woman's eyes as she quietly thanked him. Throughout the morning, customer after customer walked through the door. A nurse stopped by on her way to work. A delivery driver needed his brakes adjusted. A retired veteran simply came to drink coffee and chat. Every person greeted Daniel like an old friend. Not because he was wealthy. Because he had spent years helping anyone who needed him. Around noon, the peaceful street suddenly changed. A convoy of 6 black luxury SUVs rolled slowly around the corner before stopping directly outside the bicycle shop. People walking nearby froze. Store owners stepped outside to see what was happening. Even passing drivers slowed their cars. The vehicle doors opened almost simultaneously. Several professionally dressed security officers stepped onto the sidewalk, scanning the area before opening the rear door of the center SUV. An elderly man wearing an elegant navy suit slowly stepped out. His silver hair, confident posture, and calm expression immediately caught everyone's attention. Within seconds, several bystanders recognized him. "Isn't that Richard Harrington? The billionaire? What would someone like him want with a bicycle mechanic?" The elderly businessman ignored the whispers. Instead of heading toward the expensive restaurants nearby, he walked directly into Daniel's modest repair shop. Daniel looked up from tightening the wheel of another bicycle. The moment their eyes met, both men stood perfectly still. For several long seconds, neither spoke. Then, to everyone's complete astonishment, the billionaire's eyes filled with emotion. He crossed the room, stopped in front of Daniel, and wrapped both arms around him in a heartfelt embrace. The shop fell silent. The security guards lowered their heads respectfully. Customers stared in disbelief. The billionaire's voice trembled as he whispered, "I've searched for you for 10 years." Daniel closed his eyes briefly before answering, "I hoped you'd never have to." Standing across the street, Victoria's personal assistant, Emily, had just finished delivering documents to a nearby office. She witnessed the entire scene. Instinctively, she lifted her phone and began recording. Within minutes, she uploaded the video online with one simple caption. Why is one of the richest men in the country hugging a bicycle mechanic? The video exploded across social media. Millions watched in disbelief. Television reporters began investigating. Business journalists searched through old corporate records. One question echoed across the entire country. Who was Daniel really? None of them were prepared for the answer. By sunset, Daniel's name had become the most searched topic in the country. Television anchors replayed the now viral video of billionaire Richard Harrington embracing a humble bicycle mechanic. News websites published countless theories. Some claimed Daniel had once saved Richard's life. Others believed he was a long-lost relative. A few even suggested it was an elaborate publicity stunt. No one knew the truth. Inside his modest repair shop, Daniel continued replacing a bicycle tire as if nothing had happened. Outside, reporters crowded the sidewalk, their cameras pointed toward the small storefront. Microphones waited for a statement that never came. Daniel simply smiled at his customers and finished every repair before closing time. When the last customer left, Richard Harrington quietly locked the front door behind them. For a moment, the two men stood in silence. Richard looked around the tiny shop, the worn wooden shelves, the neatly arranged tools, the faded photographs of neighborhood children smiling beside their repaired bicycles. His voice was filled with emotion. "You really meant it," Richard said softly. Daniel looked up. "Meant what?" "You said money wasn't the only way to build a meaningful life." Daniel smiled faintly. "I've never regretted that decision." Richard sighed deeply before sitting on an old wooden chair. "For 10 years, I've carried something that belongs to you." He carefully removed a thick leather folder from his briefcase and placed it on the workbench. Daniel didn't touch it. He already knew what was inside. Across the city, Victoria sat alone in her luxurious penthouse apartment, anxiously refreshing news websites every few minutes. Every television channel was talking about Daniel. Every headline featured his photograph. She couldn't understand why. "He fixes bicycles," she muttered to herself. "That's all he's ever done." Her phone suddenly rang. It was her assistant, Emily. "Victoria," Emily said nervously, "I think you need to watch this." Seconds later, a video arrived. Victoria pressed play. She watched Richard Harrington, the billionaire every business leader admired, embrace Daniel with tears in his eyes. Her confidence disappeared. Who is my husband?" she whispered. Back inside the repair shop, Richard slowly opened the leather folder. Inside were faded newspaper articles, old company photographs, legal documents, and one framed picture of two young men standing proudly beside a prototype electric bicycle. Daniel stared at the photograph. His expression softened. "My brother," he whispered. Richard nodded. "I've never forgotten him." 10 years earlier, Daniel and his younger brother, Michael Carter, had founded a transportation technology company unlike anything the country had ever seen. While other companies focused on luxury vehicles, the Carter brothers dreamed of creating affordable electric transportation that ordinary families could afford. Their revolutionary battery system attracted investors from around the world. Within 3 years, their company was valued at over $3 billion. Daniel became one of the youngest engineering visionaries in the nation. Newspapers called him the future of transportation. But success came with impossible pressure. Competitors tried to steal their technology. Investors demanded faster expansion. Daniel worked day and night, believing every sacrifice would build a better future. Then tragedy struck. Late one rainy evening, Michael drove to the research facility carrying the final prototype of their newest battery system. On the highway, a speeding truck lost control. The collision was devastating. Michael never made it home. Daniel arrived at the hospital just minutes too late. The last conversation he ever had with his brother echoed in his mind every single day. "Don't let success make you forget why we started." Those words changed Daniel forever. He blamed himself for pushing Michael to work such long hours. No amount of money could erase the guilt. After the funeral, Daniel shocked the business world. He resigned as CEO. He refused interviews. He sold nearly all of his ownership in the company. Most of the billions he received quietly disappeared into children's hospitals, medical research centers, veterans organizations, scholarships, and charities. He kept almost nothing for himself. The media called him a mystery. Some believed he had vanished overseas. Others assumed he had suffered a breakdown. No one imagined he had chosen a completely different life. Daniel used a small portion of his remaining savings to purchase a forgotten bicycle repair shop in a quiet neighborhood. There, he found peace. Every repaired bicycle meant another child could ride safely to school. Every free repair helped struggling families. Every grateful smile reminded him why he had first fallen in love with engineering, not to become rich, but to make people's lives better. Richard's voice broke the silence. "You didn't abandon your dream, Daniel." Daniel looked up. "No. You simply changed the way you fulfilled it." Richard smiled proudly. "Our company has survived because of the foundation you built. But it has lost its heart. The board wants profits. You always wanted people." He slid another document across the workbench. "The directors voted unanimously this morning." Daniel glanced down. It was an official appointment letter. They wanted him to return as chairman and chief executive officer. At that exact moment, Victoria watched a live news broadcast from her apartment. The anchor looked directly into the camera. "Sources have now confirmed that bicycle mechanic Daniel Carter is the reclusive billionaire engineer who founded Harrington Mobility Technologies, a company now valued at over $28 billion. Victoria's face turned pale. Her hands began to tremble. The bouquet of white lilies she had thrown aside the night before suddenly flashed through her mind. For the first time since their marriage, she realized she had never been ashamed of Daniel's job. She had been blind to the greatness of the man himself. And now, she feared she had lost him forever. The news spread faster than anyone could have imagined. Within 24 hours, every major television network, newspaper, and business magazine carried the same headline. Bicycle mechanic revealed as billionaire founder who walked away from a multi-billion-dollar empire. Daniel Carter had become the most talked-about man in the country. Reporters camped outside his small bicycle repair shop day and night. News helicopters circled overhead. Curious crowds gathered on the sidewalk, hoping to catch a glimpse of the humble mechanic whose life had turned out to be one of the greatest mysteries in modern business. Yet every morning, Daniel unlocked his shop at exactly 8 o'clock. He greeted customers with the same warm smile. He repaired broken chains. He adjusted bicycle brakes. He pumped tires for children on their way to school. Nothing about him had changed. Only the world around him had. Meanwhile, Victoria's perfect life was quietly falling apart. At her corporate headquarters, employees whispered whenever she walked through the office. Some looked at her with sympathy. Others couldn't hide their disappointment. One executive muttered quietly. She humiliated one of the most respected men in the country, and never even knew who he really was. Victoria pretended not to hear. But every word pierced her heart. That evening she returned to the luxury penthouse that once felt like a symbol of success. Now it felt painfully empty. Daniel's side of the closet was nearly bare. His favorite coffee mug still rested in the kitchen. The chair where he used to read every evening remained untouched. For the first time in years, Victoria realized how silent the apartment had become. She sat alone on the living room floor, replaying the gala in her mind. Daniel had arrived carrying flowers. Not to embarrass her. Not to ask for attention. Simply to celebrate their wedding anniversary. The bouquet she had thrown away had been bought with nearly all of his weekly earnings. Tears rolled down her face. "I never even said thank you," she whispered. The following morning, unable to bear the guilt any longer, Victoria drove to Daniel's bicycle shop. She expected reporters. She expected curious crowds. What she did not expect was the long line of ordinary people waiting outside before the shop even opened. Teachers. Construction workers. Doctors. Delivery drivers. Retired veterans. Single mothers holding children's bicycles. None of them had come because Daniel was famous. They had been coming here for years. Victoria quietly stood at the back of the line, unnoticed beneath a pair of sunglasses. As she waited, she began hearing stories. A retired firefighter smiled warmly. 5 years ago, my grandson's bike was stolen. Daniel spent 2 nights building him another one from spare parts, and refused a single penny. A young nurse added. When I lost my husband, I couldn't afford transportation to the hospital. Mr. Daniel repaired my bicycle for free every month until I got back on my feet. Nearby, an elderly veteran gently touched the handlebars of his bicycle. My pension wasn't enough to pay for repairs, he said. I tried leaving money on his counter anyway. What happened? Another customer asked. The old man smiled. The next morning I found an envelope in my mailbox. There was twice as much money inside. Victoria felt her heart sink. How many lives had Daniel quietly changed without ever telling anyone? Then a little girl, no older than 8, skipped happily toward the shop carrying a handmade drawing. She proudly showed it to everyone nearby. It was a picture of Daniel fixing bicycles beneath a rainbow. Across the top, written in colorful crayon, were the words. Thank you for helping my daddy ride again. Victoria could no longer hold back her tears. She suddenly realized something that haunted her. Daniel had never tried to become important. He had simply tried to become useful. When Daniel finally arrived, he was surprised to see Victoria waiting quietly near the entrance. Their eyes met. Neither spoke for several seconds. The crowd respectfully stepped back. Victoria slowly walked toward him. Her confident posture from the gala had disappeared. Instead, she looked exhausted. Broken. Ashamed. Without caring who was watching, she lowered her head. I'm so sorry, Daniel. Her voice trembled. I judged your worth by your job, your clothes, your income. She wiped away her tears. I never looked at your heart. Daniel listened silently. I spent years chasing success, she continued. And all along, I was living with the richest man I have ever known. She shook her head. Not because of your money. Because of your kindness. Unable to stand any longer, Victoria fell to her knees. I'm begging you. Please forgive me. The crowd watched in complete silence. Daniel immediately bent down and gently helped her to her feet. You don't belong on the ground, he said softly. His kindness only made Victoria cry harder. You forgive me? Daniel nodded. I forgave you the moment I left the gala. Hope flickered across Victoria's face. For one brief second, she believed everything could still be repaired. Then Daniel quietly reached into his leather briefcase. He removed a sealed envelope. Victoria recognized it instantly. Divorce papers. Daniel placed them gently in her hands. There is a difference, he said calmly, between forgiving someone, and pretending nothing happened. Victoria stared at the documents through blurred eyes. Our marriage didn't end because you embarrassed me, Daniel continued. It ended because you stopped respecting me long before that night. His voice remained gentle. There can be no lasting love where respect has disappeared. Victoria's hands trembled as she held the papers. She wanted to speak. To apologize again. To promise she would change. But deep inside, she knew he was right. Some wounds heal. Others become lessons. Daniel gave her one final, compassionate smile before turning toward the waiting customers. Within moments, he was kneeling beside a little boy's bicycle, adjusting its loose training wheels as though nothing extraordinary had happened. The crowd watched quietly. Victoria stood frozen. At that moment, she finally understood the painful truth. The greatest treasure she had ever possessed was never Daniel's fortune. It was his heart. And she had thrown it away the same way she had thrown away the bouquet of white lilies. 6 months passed. The excitement surrounding Daniel Carter's true identity slowly faded, but the impact of his story remained. Newspapers no longer chased him for interviews every day, yet schools taught his journey as a lesson in humility, and business leaders quoted his speeches about integrity and purpose. True to his word, Daniel accepted the position of chairman and chief executive officer of Harrington Mobility Technologies. However, on his very first day, he surprised the board of directors with a simple announcement. Standing before executives in tailored suits, he looked around the room before speaking. "I'm not here to build the richest transportation company in the world." The room fell silent. "I'm here to build the most trusted one." Some directors exchanged uncertain glances. One investor cautiously asked, "Mr. Carter, what exactly does that mean?" Daniel smiled. "It means profits will never come before people." Over the next few months, Daniel transformed the company in ways no one expected. He launched a nationwide scholarship program for young engineers whose families could not afford college. He invested millions in developing affordable electric bicycles and environmentally friendly transportation for low-income communities. He expanded the company's charity foundation, funding children's hospitals, veterans rehabilitation centers, and vocational training programs across the country. Employees were encouraged to spend paid volunteer days helping in their own neighborhoods. Instead of measuring success only by quarterly earnings, Daniel introduced a new company motto. "If our success doesn't improve lives, it isn't success." At first, some shareholders feared his ideas would reduce profits. Instead, the opposite happened. Customers trusted the company more than ever. Sales reached record-breaking levels. Within a year, Harrington Mobility Technologies became one of the most respected corporations in the world, not simply because it earned billions, but because it changed millions of lives. Yet despite leading a global company, Daniel refused to close the little bicycle repair shop. Every Saturday morning, before sunrise, he unlocked the familiar wooden door just as he always had. Children raced down the street with bicycles needing repairs. Parents stopped by just to say hello. The old coffee pot remained on the counter for retired veterans who gathered to share stories. To Daniel, nothing about those Saturdays felt unusual. They reminded him of who he truly was. One bright spring morning, a television crew arrived to film a documentary about his remarkable journey. The reporter watched in amazement as Daniel knelt beside a little girl's pink bicycle, carefully fixing a loose chain while explaining how to oil it properly. When he finished, the little girl hugged him tightly before riding away with a huge smile. Only then did the interview begin. The reporter looked around the small repair shop before asking the question millions of viewers had been wondering. "Mr. Carter, you oversee a company worth tens of billions of dollars. You own private offices overlooking the city. You could spend every weekend traveling the world. So why do you still repair bicycles?" Daniel picked up an old wrench from his workbench and gently turned it in his hands. A warm smile appeared on his face. "When I was young," he said quietly, "I believed success meant building something great." He paused. "After losing my brother, I realized something far more important." The room became completely silent. A person's value isn't measured by the size of their bank account. It's measured by the number of lives they make better. He looked toward the open shop door, where children laughed as they rode their bicycles down the sidewalk. "This little shop reminds me that every act of kindness matters. You don't need millions of dollars to change someone's life. Sometimes all it takes is repairing a bicycle so a child can get to school safely." The reporter lowered her microphone. She had no more questions. Across the country, millions of viewers watching the live broadcast rose to their feet in applause. Schools replayed the interview for students. Business organizations shared it during leadership seminars. Charities used Daniel's story to inspire volunteers. His words became a symbol of humility, compassion, and true leadership. That same afternoon, Victoria quietly stood across the street from the bicycle shop. She had watched the interview from beginning to end. In her hands was a bouquet of fresh white lilies, the same flowers Daniel had once brought to the gala on their wedding anniversary. This time, she wasn't there to ask for another chance. She knew some mistakes could never be undone. As Daniel stepped outside to lock the shop for the evening, he noticed her standing beneath a flowering tree. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Victoria walked forward and gently handed him the bouquet. "I should have accepted these the first time," she said softly. Daniel looked at the flowers, then back at her. A gentle smile crossed his face. "Thank you." There was no bitterness. No anger. Only peace. Victoria smiled through her tears. "I hope you're happy." Daniel looked toward the neighborhood children riding their bicycles through the park. "I already am." He wished her well, then quietly walked back toward the little repair shop where laughter and gratitude filled the air. Victoria watched him disappear inside. For the first time, she understood that true wealth had never been hidden in Daniel's billions. It had always been found in his humility, his kindness, and his unwavering respect for others. She turned and walked away, not with regret alone, but with a determination to become a better person because of the lesson he had taught her. The little bicycle shop remained open every Saturday, becoming a place where strangers became friends, hope was restored, and kindness was passed from one generation to the next. People no longer visited simply to meet the billionaire who repaired bicycles. They came to meet the man who proved that greatness is never defined by status, wealth, or titles. It is defined by character.